Record. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Welcome to our panel discussion on teaching with AI. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can see our speakers. I'm Dr. Allison Boyer, Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I am so excited to have you all here today and listen to what I think is going to be just a really rich and interesting discussion with some wonderful members of the Collin College community here. We have some faculty and administrators, and this is part of the AI in the Classroom series that we're hosting this summer. And our focus for today is going to be specifically on teaching with AI. So what are some ways that we can use it in the classroom and kind of manage it? We will have another webinar later this summer in July that's going to focus on designing assessments kind of around AI. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves to all of you, and then we will get started. I will monitor the chat just so everybody knows. So if you have a question along the way, go ahead and pop it into the chat. I will bring it up to our panelists at an appropriate time, but we will also save some time at the end of the hour for some open Q&A with our panelists. Does that sound okay to everyone? All right, so let's do some quick introductions. Jeff, you want to start us off?
Sure, yes, I'm Jeff Courtwright and I teach philosophy at the Plano campus.
Great, thanks. Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Groover. I've been with Collin for 13 years and I teach on the Frisco campus. I teach paralegal courses and business law courses.
Wonderful, thank you. Mindy.
I'll unmute myself now. Hi, I'm Mindy Bailey and I teach humanities at the Collin campus.
Awesome, thank you. And Regina.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Regina Hughes. I am an associate dean at the Plano campus and a former professor of psychology for 10 years at the Frisco campus.
I'd also like to add that Regina's actually on vacation right now, but she was nice enough to still be a part of this panel discussion. So extra kudos to her and extra gratitude for that.
I appreciate that. It's yeah, quite lovely here. I would love to show you my background, but you guys would probably be overwhelmed like I am. It's amazing.
Well, don't
the other
make us
thing
jealous.
I wanted to add, Allison, that all of us on this panel are on the college's co-aid committee, which is focused on academic integrity, but also AI. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a context there as well.
Yes, thank you so much for that. All right, so let's dive in, shall we? I'd kind of like to start us off with kind of an overall question. I'm wondering if each of you might share a little bit about what your general philosophy is when it comes to the presence of AI in the classroom. And anybody can start us off. Or I can call on you if that's preferred.
I'll be happy to start.
Thanks,
Allison.
Cindy.
This is Cindy. Because I teach in a very niche area, so far my experience has been that the AI tools that we currently have, the keyword being currently, aren't that effective for my students to use. We drill down into very specific regulations and laws, and just right now, and I realize this is a moving target, so what I say today may not be true by the end of the semester, but I have found that there haven't been as many opportunities in my discipline as there are for others for students to misuse the tool and also for them to use it in a productive way. So I'm in the learning curve here trying to gauge when it's going to become a more urgent situation for me to address.
Thanks, Cindy. Anyone else?
I'll jump in. So my role is to support faculty at this point. At least that's how I define it, even though we do a whole lot of other things that are not necessarily supportive. But I'm, since November, it's amazing how much this has taken off. It was sort of in the end of November is when it was really launched in a big way, the generative AI, the chat GPT. And then everybody kind of broke for the break, right? And then faculty come back in January and suddenly the world's exploding. And so I felt it's incumbent upon me in my role, at least I feel like, to ensure my faculty are fully aware of as many things as I can share with them without overwhelming. And I can't promise that I didn't overwhelm. So I felt like it was important that I shared things coming down the pike. I also will make a disclaimer that as a co-chair of the COA committee, I am in no way representing the entire leadership perspective on this. But I would say if I had my professor hat on, I would embrace it fully. I would be a little, there's some concerns, no doubt, but I would be embracing it fully myself. So that is my philosophy position. Bring it on and let's figure out how to use it ethically and responsibly.
So Gina.
Well, I'll go next.
Thanks,
I
Mindy.
teach humanities, so our core question always, since I've been teaching, has been, what does it mean to be human? And I think, we march through, art and philosophy and, literature and all of it. So all of this is really my playground to begin with. So for me, I have always taken students through thinking about consciousness, what it means, reality, what is it, all of that. And so this seems to really fit nicely with what I teach, which I know is a luxury for me. So my embrace of it, my enthusiasm for it, has a lot to do with the fact that it just really gives a new dimension to my teaching and what I already taught. But I would say that my philosophy is the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going back. And I think that instead of prohibit, police, and punish, that we should be thinking about openness to experience, learning foundational skills, how to use it, how it works, how fast it's changing and trying to keep up with those changes. But also think about it as a both and instead of either or. I know a lot of the discussion has been, is it, the fear for education, is it going to think for students, or are they going to think for themselves? So either they think for themselves or the AI is going to think for them. And for me, I see it as just a wonderful interweaving and collaboration tool. And I think it's important to for students to understand that it really is just like autocomplete on steroids, right? And that it has certain qualities. It's entirely literal. It doesn't make judgments. It doesn't have opinions. You can force it to do those things, but it's not inherent within its operational integrity. That's not what it does. And the other thing is to teach them for now. I mean, ultimately, prompt engineering may not be an important skill, but for now, I think it is. And a lot of employers who are hiring, like 90% of them say that this is a skill that they're looking for in the hiring process. So I think in education, our goal, the purpose of education, is to teach skills that students need for their lives. So this, like silence, it's not going away. So learning how to use it to good effect, and to talk about the ethics of it and how to maximize their learning, self-directed study, all of it. So I have a lot of philosophy about this. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Mindy. Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, so it's going to sound like I'm coming from the opposite side of Mindy here.
It's okay.
I do in many ways wish that ChatGPT never came out. I do have a lot of reservations about whether it's going to impede certain, for me as a philosophy professor, core components of what I expect students to be able to do in my class. That said,
And I
the
will even
genie's out of
offer
the
to walk the little
bottle,
dog
and we
in a
need
few hours
to
if you're busy. Well, I just
we need to learn how to deal with that.
would
So I think I want to make sure that the student outcomes are still preserved, right? Critical thinking, communication,
good.
personal responsibility, and so on. And my philosophy is I am going to address this in the classroom with my students with a unit actually on AI, much like Mindy was suggesting, you know, thinking about, well, what is consciousness and so on. But I want my students to understand what these generative models are, how they work, right? How to use them appropriately and ethically. Okay. And then also what its potential harms, but really what its limitations are too, because they really need to understand the limitations of this technology. So I want to make sure that they do understand that and that they understand what it is as well. So, you know, classic philosopher's question, what is AI? What is generative AI? But then also making sure they understand how to use it appropriately as well as limitations. So that's kind of my overall broad approach.
So I want to jump in one more time and say, I think that at the heart of all of this, the same thing that generative AI is dealing with in, you know, the world and the global conversation. And that is, you know, we have to teach transparency, accountability, and you know, foundational knowledge above all. And I think every class should be having discussions about the ethics of this.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think I really like that everybody has kind of a different, slightly different twist, different philosophy about it. I think that's the name of the game, right? We're all going to approach it differently. And that's what we want in a panel discussion is different perspectives. So let's keep going. And maybe you all could talk a little bit about some of the different ways that you have used or incorporated AI in your teaching, or things that you've seen other people do. And, you know, what has the response been? What have the results been?
Allison, this is Cindy. One of the things that I do is I run all of my questions through AI to see what AI will tell my students the answer is. And as I said before, it has not yet been a very good student of mine. So I'm not too worried. Again, in June, what the answer will be in September may be very different, but I'm not too worried about them using AI to generate answers that are likely to earn them a lot of points. I have also tried it to generate assignments and questions. And again, because my area is so niche, it just isn't there yet. It doesn't generate questions that are meaningful, that are helpful, that are likely to lead to productive assignments and questions for students. So I think those are going to be, for many disciplines, going to be very good things to do. And I expect my day will come very soon, but not quite there yet. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
One thing,
no, go for it, Jeff.
one thing that I've been really working on because of my experience in the spring was discussion boards, okay? Specifically discussion boards in Canvas that I use. I don't know how many of you rely on these, but as a philosophy professor, as well as I'm sure many other disciplines, you need to be able to host these discussions. What I found in the spring was those were the most at-risk assignments for me for ChatGPT use. And so what I have been working on this summer is I'm going to call it an AI integrated, excuse me, assignment, where I'm going to have students, we read Plato's Euthyphro, a dialogue by Plato, and Socrates has this big discussion with Euthyphro there. And what I want them to do is read the dialogue and then start to play with ChatGPT as if it's playing Euthyphro to the student's Socrates, okay? But don't use the topic that they do in the Euthyphro, which is piety. Instead, let's say something like justice, or something even less heavy and significant. It could be something like rights, human rights, okay? And through the student having to pose as a Socrates to the Euthyphro, when GPT gives a response to what are human rights, then the student is placed in that critical position of having to analyze the response and say, well, okay, that sounds good, but what about this? Come up with counter examples, come up with, things that GPT is missing, and so on. There are some limitations to that I'll discuss maybe later on. I think there's a question that will deal with pitfalls, but you do have to be careful there, because then, of course, how is the student going to submit this to you? It could be pages long, right? This interaction. So they would have to do some sort of summary perhaps of it. But I've played that way with GPT-4, and I found it to be very interesting, very telling for me about its limitations, but also I think that could be a good exercise for students who need to understand sort of how to engage with it in a critical way.
So I'll touch on that. I do something that is similarly motivated, but also it's kind of the back end of that. So I have an extra credit assignment that students can do where they go in and I give them a prompt that I've created that creates a Socratic method dialogue format. And then they go in and have this discussion with it, only the chatbot works as Socrates, and then they are, put through their paces, and it finds, the holes in their arguments and all of that. And I have them talk to it for 10 minutes, document it. And then I have them go to character.ai and have a chat for 10 minutes with either Plato or Socrates inside of that AI, and then do a reflection at the end of what they learned about Socratic method, how they can use this in their lives, and to compare and contrast the two different experiences in which they like better and why. So, and they love that assignment.
And in the handout that I emailed to everybody earlier today, Mindy shared some links to several of her assignments that kind of incorporate discussions with AI. So I encourage everybody to take a look at those. They're very cool.
Allison, I wanted to jump in here as an administrator who is currently doing annual appraisals, that we are all going to have AI do those for us. So that should be interesting for you guys. I'm kidding, of course. One of the ways in which I think it could be helpful for faculty in their appraisal process is we're really being asked to encourage all of our faculty to write SMART goals, right? Getting away from that narrative. I could see where someone could throw in the narrative up in the generative AI and say, write it in a SMART goal. From my perspective, in what I do every day, obviously it's not in the classroom, but it is about productivity. And some of the things that you guys have talked about, I know, Cindy, with the fact that you're saying, hey, I use it to kind of generate stuff for myself. Those are some of the questions that have come up in the context of our co-ed, conversations. How much do we want to encourage our faculty or say, hey, if you're saying to students they can't use it, in your classroom, but it's okay for you to use it. Right? I mean, so those are conversations we have yet to kind of drill down on. And I don't know that we're going to say either way, you can't do anything. But as a faculty member, I would say, because in my role, right, if I have a student who says, my instructor told me I can't use AI, and they come to me complaining, you know, what am I going to say? I think the challenge, I'm just going to throw this out here, and I've had this conversation with others, for faculty who do decide to put a statement under the auspices of academic freedom that students cannot use generative AI. I would just encourage you to consider how you're going to mitigate that and how you're going to know whether they are one way or the other, and then challenge them. And if it goes to the dean of students and you want to, you know, claim plagiarism or cheating, the dean of students may not be in a position where they can say with 100% that they're comfortable moving forward with this. So I'm not saying that you can't put that in your syllabus, but I am suggesting that you have to have a way to then move forward with it if you're going to, I don't want to call it prosecute it, but move it through that system. And I just don't know where we are with that. I'm sure many of you probably heard the headline of the Texas A&M Commerce professor who basically failed all the students, suggesting they all used AI. Well, that did not turn out very well in the public headlines. And so again, this is all new territory for all of us. And I just wanted to put that out there because I, as an associate dean, have to look at your syllabi when students come in and talk to them about your academic freedom. And so I'll be curious to see where you guys as faculty go with all that.
So I wanted to mention a resource that everybody, if you're just getting started, is really helpful. Turnitin has an entire space that they've dedicated to academic integrity in the age of AI. And they have tons of resources on how to structure assignments. They have it's for teachers and students. So it gives some really good instruction and rubrics that you can go through to see how to structure assignments and things. So I really recommend that.
Thanks, Mindy. And thanks, Regina, for providing that administrative perspective on all of this. I think that is super helpful. We have somebody in the chat, somebody who's here with us today, another faculty member, Whitney Pisani, who mentioned that she has an assignment that she could share with everyone. Whitney, are you open to sharing that with the group right now?
I'm ready to share.
Awesome.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So I teach speech communication courses for Collin, and I know that the conversation this morning is primarily revolved around ChatGPT, but I use a different form of AI. And since the title of the webinar was AI, I thought it was appropriate to share in case any of you are interested in it. So in my courses, I am using some virtual reality software for my students. We have partnered with the ELC, and we have purchased 2 virtual reality headsets that are housed at the Frisco and the Plano campus. And we have purchased a subscription to a virtual reality platform called Virtual Speech. And so it's an opportunity for students to get some practice in public speaking prior to giving their speeches in a classroom setting, or at least that's how I'm using it right now. So I encourage them to go into the library to check out the device and then to go into a study room and kind of get comfortable playing around with it and standing up and practicing it. And it also helps them with their nerves and things of that nature. And this is an opportunity for any student at Collin. All faculty can use it. You don't need to be a speech or communication professor. So far, we piloted this program last year. And so last year was a lot of kind of like working out the kinks and figuring out the system, but things are starting to fall into place. And so we're going to try and do another year, and I'll be promoting it more heavily. But if you're interested in something like that, if your students give presentations, I would really encourage you to check it out and try it yourself. Also, for faculty, you are welcome to go in and check the device out yourself, and you can take it and play with it for a bit so that you feel comfortable explaining it to your students. And you can also take it into your classroom. And so some professors have done that and have actually brought it in and then given their students an opportunity to try it and play with it in the classroom. And since I'm teaching virtually, that's not something I've been able to do. I'm just using it for extra credit, but it's a pretty cool opportunity. It's got some different platforms. So they can go into like a stadium and give a big formal speech, or they can do something much smaller in a small group setting that's like a boardroom or a classroom. They can also practice their interviewing skills for anyone who might be teaching like management or marketing or business communication courses. So there's just a lot of different features that you might be interested in checking out. And if you have any other questions about that, I would just ask you to email me and I can share all of that information with you. So far, it's been pretty cool, and the feedback has been pretty good. Sometimes it's like like I said, the first year we were kind of trying to figure it out. So it's not 100% success, but I'm confident this next year is going to be the year that it really takes off and flies. So thank you for letting me share that, Allison.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney. And maybe you want to pop your email into the chat in case anybody wants to contact you about that. That would be great.
Definitely. Thank you.
Also, I just want to mention in the chat, another faculty member, Jennifer Gray, has mentioned another free AI service students can use called Udly, where they can practice speeches or interviews. So take a look at the chat. She's provided some really great information about that there. So thanks, everyone.
Sorry to keep intruding. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
I'm really excited about this and all the uses of it. So I wanted to contribute. Thank you for letting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jennifer. That I think is one of the things I really love about being able to do these meetings on Zoom, these sessions on Zoom, is that we can easily share resources and ideas during the discussion by using the chat feature. It's not quite as easy to do that during a face-to-face workshop. So I definitely appreciate that. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, so let's keep moving. I'm going to move forward and go to one of our next questions, which has to do with what suggestions or advice do our panelists have for other instructors for embracing and using AI in their own teaching, especially those who might be a little bit more skeptical or trepidatious about it. So do you have first any tips for successful implementation, like things to do that will make it work really well or work in the way that you want it to? But also, as Jeff mentioned previously, what are some pitfalls that you would advise others to try to avoid if they're trying to implement it? Are there any kind of lessons learned that you've had in the process that you would like to share?
This is Cindy. I would encourage people to spend time learning about AI. If you don't understand it, at least at a rudimentary level, you're not going to be able to harness its power or control its use. And Regina introduced me to a wonderful blog by Ethan Mollick. I'll add his name and the name of his blog. It's One Useful Thing is the name of his blog. And that has really taken me to a different level of understanding about the process. He gives so much assistance in developing prompts and also just understanding how it works and where we are currently in the development of this particular tool. So I think learning is a key part, and this is so important for those of us who work closely with adjunct faculty who don't have the access or perhaps the time to do the deep dive that we full-time professors can do. They need our support to get to that finish line. And so that's one of the things that I'm kind of focusing on. How can I assist my assistant professors in getting to that point? Because many of them, I think, would say, yeah, I have no idea what to do. I don't even know how to begin that process.
Allison, I wanted to add kind of piggyback on what Sydney just said about everyone using it and learning about it themselves, right? That becomes important. Pew Research did a survey in March of adults. And what they learned is about 58% of adults were somewhat familiar with ChatGPT, but only 14% had ever even tried it. And so, and it also broke it down, and I can share that resource if you guys are interested. That's the kind of stuff I look at, right? More of a global aspect of it. But it's interesting that it breaks down in I'm going to say ethnic groups who are more likely to use it or have more access, perhaps, right? So this comes into play as well as how much do our students have access to? Right now, everything is free. But what happens when those paywalls go up? And where are we going to be? Are you all as faculty members going to say, hey, in my class, you have to pay for this? Or are we going to look at institutional opportunities to purchase, right? I know Jennifer mentioned Packback and UNT has it. I've looked at that. I don't know what the charges are, but what we're going to be relying on heavily from our faculty, and this is part of what the co-aid committee is discussing, is what is going to be, and it changes so much, so it's kind of hard to keep track of it all. But what will you all find that you want in your classroom? And if we have enough of you saying we need this, we need to purchase the institutional, we'll obviously work with the ELC on that. So part of it may come from them, but just be mindful as you find new tools that we don't have. Let your associate deans and deans know, because that becomes part of us gathering that. And then as an institution, we can see where we spend our funding.
Thank you, Regina.
I think I am trying to develop a unit on AI as well as some assignments that incorporate it. I completely agree with having to actually use it for a while. Like, you have to become familiar with what it can do, what kinds of questions to ask. Mindy has an excellent guide to prompt engineering that I've relied on myself. And I also endorse Ethan Mollick's blog as well. That's a huge source of information. However, I think we have to be careful that when we use or when we create assignments, that they're scaled appropriately to our student outcomes as well as to our sort of abilities. So in terms of length, right, how am I going to get my students to submit this engagement with ChatGPT, let's say, if I have them doing the Socratic interlocutor kind of assignment? It could be pages long and so on. So I've got to figure out, well, how are they going to actually show me what they did and how they accomplished this assignment? Also, what becomes very clear is that ChatGPT is extremely good at sounding plausible. Everything it says sounds plausible unless you're an expert and you recognize, oh no, that's far too general and that's too vague, or that is wrong, dead wrong. Our students aren't going to know that. Quite frequently, they're not going to be content experts at all in the field that we are trying to sort of have them engage. So that's another thing to think about, sort of what their limitations are in terms of knowledge when they are trying to critically approach GPT. And finally, as Mindy and others have been saying, they do need to learn the skill of prompt engineering to use this tool properly. So all assignments that I'm going to give my students that incorporate it, I can't just assume that they know how to properly engage with ChatGPT. And I'm going to have to sort of give them indications of that, how to properly work with it, and perhaps even model it in class myself or on a video if it's an online class. Here's how you prompt engineer with regard to this question, or, you know, just to give them examples. So those are three key areas that I found I have to constantly think about when I'm creating these assignments for the fall, incorporating AI. Expertise, right? The length and how they're going to actually hand it in, and then sort of developing those prompt engineering skills. So that's something that I've run into designing these assignments for the fall.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeff.
I think that it's important to keep in mind the nature of the beast and what its limitations are, but also its strengths. And when you learn how to communicate with it pretty well, you find that you can downplay the weaknesses and build the strengths. So considering context and constraints in your prompts is really important. If you just ask a wide open question, it has no boundaries for that. It just is very broad and general and vague and all of that. So I found that a lot of my students would ask, really broad questions going in, and then one of the assignments that I do is to pair it with retrieval practice. So the retrieval practice will be things like, what's your favorite material that we covered this week? And, what'd you learn that you didn't know? What's one interesting, relevant, surprising thing that you found? That kind of stuff. And then once they've kind of done that retrieval where they're pulling back, just singularly into their own brain, what they learned, what they're curious about, then I have them go to ChatGPT and do things like take that topic or I give them the genie out of the bottle assignment where they do the retrieval practice, and then I give them a topic that is very broad, like, Plato and Aristotle, right? And then they have their seed prompt, which gives them their first output. And then they have three questions for the genie. So and I tell them to target things that are vague, that you want to know more about, things that are ambiguous, too general, that kind of stuff. So it teaches them to really do a lot of what we do when we are teaching them, and grading their papers and giving them feedback, right? So they have to learn how to ascertain where those weak points are in the argument, what they think is incorrect, all of that. Plus, think about chunking and chain of thought. So you don't want to ask it to do too much at once, right? And it's a good approach to ask it to do things or to tell you, step by step. Giving little prompts like that change the nature of the output that you're going to get back. And then you can take it in all directions. One of the things that I found that my students did in that assignment, their third question almost always, and this made my heart sing, was almost always a relevance question. All that they'd learned about all of that. Now, how does this relate to me? How can this enrich my life? What other ways can I go about learning this? Things like that. And have them fact check. It hallucinates references all the time. GPT-4 is much better than ChatGPT. 3.5 at this, much better. And if they're using Bing, it uses GPT-4, and so the Bing search is connected to the internet. So you get references that are, there. But they also need to know that the biases that are built into the internet are built into this as well. So it also helps them reflect on biases. And if you ask it to do something that, and your prompt is biased, it will straighten you out. So it does have some guardrails on it, I think, but it also makes them think about all the biases that are built into our culture. So everything has bias.
Thanks, Wendy.
Allison, can I just, a lot of people are asking about the institutional response because understandably, especially if you're an adjunct, but any faculty member, you're probably concerned about, well, can I rely on Collin to have my back in certain circumstances? And Regina did address this, but I will say that part of the co-aid committee's sort of task is to come up with excuse me, an institutional response and a statement and so on. And if I understand, and Regina completely, step in here, but to revise parts of the academic dishonesty component at Collins. So this is being done, but individual instructors still have to decide to what extent they're either going to ban its use or they're going to allow for its use in their class and have that be very explicit in the syllabus. I just
Yes,
wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm looking too, there are a lot of questions about, are we there yet? And you know, it's happened so quickly. Unfortunately, the time in which all these conversations are happening, the catalog deadlines have since passed, right? For us to even gather together to come up with something that we agree to. But yes, Terrence Brennan, as well as Sherry Jack, they are part of the co-aid committee. So they are guiding us in helping massage the language as it relates to cheating and plagiarism, et cetera. At one point, they wanted to list all the different ones that were out there, right? All the generative AIs. And we just said, no, because who knows what's going to happen next year. And, you know, we'll never be able to keep track of those. So we are going to provide faculty with some suggestions. I have reached out to Heather Webelosh, who is the one who basically massages the concourse syllabi, the standard language. And so we're looking at doing something like that and sharing that. I think it's much better for us that faculty have at least an agreed upon standard, where like we do in all of these policies that we have, or then you can expand upon them if you have some variations on a theme. As it relates to adjunct faculty, again, Cindy alluded to this, they're going to rely on us to provide what we have, right? They aren't going to take the time, nor should they, to come up with their own verbiage on these kinds of things. So we will be coming up with some of those. I think it's important that we do standardize it, if you will, like I said, on just sort of the basic. Ethan Mollick had a great one I shared with people. But to be clear, Ethan Mollick is very clear that he considered this an emerging skill, and it's very necessary that he uses it, right? So, and that may not be what everybody agrees to. So we are working on those. We will share those. They have to go through the entire leadership group before they kind of funnel back down. And it is unfortunately a slow process, but we will get there, right? We will get there.
So Austin Community College, the Composition and Literary Studies Department was kind enough to share with me their guidelines for AI use. And they came up with a wonderful document. It has good resources, but it also has verbiage for how to include different policy statements based on how you want your students to be able to use it, to include in your syllabus. And they have a blanket statement that goes into everyone's syllabus at the college. But beyond that, academic freedom, and it's just really important that your students understand exactly how they're allowed to use it in your class. And I would caution people, like Regina was saying, this is not really actionable yet, because AI detectors are, they're easy to get around. So one of the things that, so Turnitin now has the AI detection built into it when you put papers through it. But I would caution people not to rely on that too heavily, because it is a very inexact science, and they're claiming numbers that are way out of keeping with what everybody else is saying they can do. So, and false positives. For 12 years, students have been taught to write 5-paragraph essays, just like ChatGPT writes, right? Start with your introduction, 3, supporting paragraphs, topic sentences, thesis statements, and then in conclusion or overall, right? Sum it up at the end, restate your thesis. So, so you get a lot of false positives just based on the fact that, we've kind of taught this formulaically, and that's what ChatGPT has been structured around.
Yes, those AI detection resources or tools are certainly there's a lot of them out there, but I don't think that any of them are 100% accurate, and trying to rely on them is probably not advisable. Shiva, you've had your hand up for a while. What is your question for the group?
Hi, I actually do have a comment. I think if you put all of us together, I just checked, we have 76 people in attendance. If you put all our experiences together, we have been teaching well over 1,000 years, if you add all the service experiences. And I think we are giving up too easily on this newly added AI. I think why shouldn't we rethink the way that we assess the students? You know, with the presence of Canvas and Blackboard and whatever before that, we are so used to assessing our students online that now we have to find way to find plagiarism and so on and so forth. For the for in-person classes, why not bring back the assessment to the class, have them read, have them study everything online, and come back to the classroom and do the assessment face to face? You know, like the good old days when I was in, I don't know, high school, you had to be tested in the classroom. So in that case, there is no fear of AI or anything like that. For the online classes, we have to put our minds together and find a way that we actually get to see the students when they are writing a paper. And I understand that the disciplines are different. You know, a paper on humanity is 100% different than answer, I don't know, to the GI function in a physiology classroom. So why not rethink the way that we assess the students rather than being so fearful of AI? That's my comment, question for the panel, and I would love to hear your responses. Thank you.
I share many of the concerns that Shiva has presented, or thoughts that she has presented. I definitely use HonorLock for all of my tests that are online. I did it before ChatGPT, and I continue to do it now. And I work hard to figure out ways of maintaining the academic integrity, both in the classroom and on online courses. So I share those concerns for sure.
And I agree that in a face-to-face class, you could mitigate any sort of academic dishonesty concerns, you know, by having the students do most of their major assessments in class face-to-face. That doesn't, however, address the numerous online only courses, web courses. And some of us probably have a mixture of the two. So, well, the face-to-face class I see as, you know, being able to more easily just say, okay, well, you know, you're not going to be able to use AI on this test, or I can have some writing assignments that they do in class on paper if need be. The fact remains that for my online classes, a lot of those bets are off. And if they're using HonorLock for an exam, they can still easily just pull up Bing and put all of that into their phone and, you know, produce the answer. So yeah, I do think that we can use, you know, we can come up with assignments both that incorporate AI, but also that are more or less AI resistant. And those will generally be easier for me, at least, to think about how you could do that in a face-to-face than it would wholly online. But maybe I'm an outlier here.
No, I agree that it's really difficult in an online class. But I would also say that the assignments that I use this with, that I am trying to build their skills and teach them how to use it, are really low stakes. And so I think the more low stakes it is, the less likely they are to want to cheat. I didn't have any students who didn't go there first and then use ChatGPT. And I did have students who were resistant to it, who were just like, you know, this is just it just feels wrong. That, it's something that is going to be integrated into Microsoft Office. It's already search engines, Bing already has it there. There will be all sorts of other things. So trying to lock it down, I don't think it's going to work. But yeah, if you're in a face-to-face class, absolutely. People have talked about how get them to write that draft, the first draft of an essay in class, look at that, and then teach them how to go in with critical thinking and show the process. So show your work, what are the prompts you use to take it here to there. The other thing is, we use a lot of instructional AI, like, spell check, Grammarly, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean that we stop teaching spelling and grammar, right? It just means that, they have this other source that they can use to polish things. And, I use it all the time. So it's hard for me to say, for me saying, don't use AI for anything is tantamount to saying don't use the internet. And I just think that's untenable. And they need these skills.
I want to jump on that about the skills they need. Clearly, I'm not, you guys are more granular in your content in your classroom, and the way I think generally is this way, right? So I'm looking at what's coming down the pike and what the expectations are. And it's interesting because we've had these discussions in the co-aid committee, and there was a time in which there was a presumption that students left us to go on to university to get the four-year degree, traditional. That's just not happening the way it used to, right? So they're going right into jobs. And now a lot of your classes are part of these workforce programs. So that means that there is going to be an expectation that they at least know how to use AI. And so that is what is happening. And so it feels like that's just one of those things that everybody needs to at least address. In the context of your discipline, how can it be used? Doesn't necessarily mean that you create your entire course around it, but I think it's important that students hear from you as faculty members about it and how it can be used in the best way. And again, all the things that we've talked about before, each of you have your own academic freedom to design it. But as Mindy has suggested, truly, this is not going away. It will be part of everyone's work life. And I think when you start looking at what some of the industry trades are, and I know that a lot of you know these things, McKinsey Consulting had just released a report, and they literally are talking about hiring for potential, no longer for pedigree. And so that means the skills. And I've even talked to my own children when they go into any kind of an interview, when we're all asked, okay, do you have any questions for us? I am telling my kids to say, how are you using AI in your company? How do you foresee using AI? I want my kids to be at the cutting edge in knowledge base anyway, right? So I think it becomes really important for all of us to at least consider this as a skill set that's really important for all of our students. And I'll leave it at that.
We have about 6 or 7 minutes left in our time today, so I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for our attendees to ask any questions that have not yet been answered during our discussion today. So there's a lot of people who are here today. So I'm going to ask you, if you have a question, would you please raise your hand or put it in the chat so that I can kind of help facilitate that process. Freddie, you have raised your hand. What is your question?
Yeah, well, I really have a comment. The thing about it is that I just began to research and look into AI for coming up for the fall. And the main thing that overall theme that I see is that AI is going to be here because Google is coming out with BARD, B-A-R-D. Microsoft is using Bing. So the business community is going to use it. So if we don't get our students prepared, they're going to be left behind. Yes, AI is only as good as the information out there because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So we got to teach them how to critically look at the information that they get and dig deeper into it and not just accept it for what it is. So we should be in the forefront as much as possible. And right, the ethical issue has to be considered and teach them the right way to use it, and even encourage them that put it in their source that they use AI to help them to find the information, but then they go on and look into it further.
So I wanted to touch on that as well, because I think it's really interesting. A lot of my students, I asked them, because I do Zoom meetings with them, and I checked in with them a lot to find out how they were using it and how they felt like their skills were building, or, you know, concerns they have, anything like that. And a lot of them said that they'd used it already in their study habits, where they've read the text, they've gone to class, they've lectured, they've gone over their notes, they've done everything they can do, and they're still confused about something. And so learning how to prompt it to say, you know, explain this to me as if I were, 12 years old or in high school or something. And then they build on that. And then they say, now explain it to me as if I were in high school and a college student and a PhD student, right? So building that kind of knowledge, I think, is good, because, you know, when they miss a building block, it's really hard for them to continue learning in something, especially in science classes. So a lot of them, you know, in their other classes have been using it just for really personal tutor.
That's a great idea for students. Amira, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to jump in and give a little bit of a different, I don't know if a different, but another perspective. Because the people in the panel, all of them are from humanities or social studies, and no one in the panel is from biology sciences. And I think that we have much less of a problem with AI, because most of our assignments are, let's say if we're teaching labs, are in the lab, and they need to identify structures. And unless they will have something that was implanted into their brain that will give them the GPT directly to their, I don't know, frontal lobe, they really need to know the material. Same goes for written assignments. They're very straightforward, short, and I would say a lot of that is data-based. So I don't see much of a problem with them cheating with that. I do, however, am very much interested in hearing some examples of how to use this platform in, for example, medical or health-related professions, because I'm pretty sure it's already out there. I know it's already out there, and I think it can be a very great tool. It's just that I see it more as a tool rather than a problem in our disciplines. Thank you.
Amira, thank you for that. I have spoken to faculty in so-called STEM fields, and what they're finding challenging is the threat of academic dishonesty on, for example, not their lab work in lab, but their lab reports. For example, GPT-4 is incredibly good at using data, organizing data, and calculating, extrapolating certain hypotheses even from the data. So I think there's a fear that in some, let's say biology, for example, that on exams, if it's an all online course, they could just plug in the question and it would produce, the right answer. In terms of the medical fields, you're right. I heard it just recently, was listening to a podcast with Ezra Klein. I don't know if some of you have heard of him. He's at New York Times, but he often has some really good AI stuff on there. And they are already using AI for medical diagnostics, right? And as they're putting more and more data in there and scaling the models with greater amounts of data, that will become in some ways more amazing and reliable than most human medical professionals would be. But the one caution there that I kept hearing was they still need medical professionals to go in and actually check, right, the output of the model in order to make sure that something isn't missing and so on. So it's fascinating because then that medical professional has to know something about medicine in order to check the result.
If I can jump in, what you describe is actually exactly what I'm saying. In our fields, it's a tool rather than a problem, because if I give them a data set and they use AI to extrapolate or get the equation or plot a graph, it's not different from me than using Excel for this exactly the same purposes. They're using a tool to take a data set, and then if they're not familiar with the types of graphs that are appropriate and so on and so forth, they will just put there something that is not worthy of the points. So they're using tools in order to get to some kind of a conclusion, but they still need to understand the data. So this is what I'm saying. I don't see it so much as a problem of generating assignments instead of them, but more as a tool to help them with those assignments. We're using tools, they're just going to be more sophisticated tools.
Okay, I hate to stop this great discussion, but we have already reached the end of the hour and I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So before we wrap it up, I just want to bring a couple of things to your attention. As I mentioned earlier, we were going to have another webinar about AI in the classroom. This one is going to focus on what I know a lot of you are concerned about, not everybody, but a lot of you, and that's how do we design assessments around AI? How do we subvert it or combat it? That's going to be on July 19th. Which is a Wednesday, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. More information can be found on the CTL events page. I put that link in the chat. And I'll be sending out some information about that as well via email prior to the event. I also want to have everybody save the date for the Fall Faculty Development Day event. That's going to be on Thursday, August 10th in the Plano Campus Conference Center. The theme of that event is higher education, security, technology, and opportunities. And we are bringing in a keynote speaker, Dr. Peggy Semmingson, who's going to talk about AI, exploring implications and concerns for teaching, learning, and assessment. I put a link to the conferences page for the CTL on the CTL website where you can already find a registration link. So keep an eye out for more information coming out about that event as well. Please join me in thanking our wonderful, knowledgeable panelists who gave up their time to talk to you all today. Jeff, Mindy, Cindy, and Regina, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your thoughts today. Please take a look at the resources handout that I sent to everybody who registered. Mindy provided a bunch of great resources, some things that she's done and some other things that she's found. I added a few other resources to it as well. So I think between all of these great people and the websites that we've shared, you should find some additional information that's helpful for you. So thank you for being here today. And I hope you will join us in July and in August as well as we continue this discussion about this continually evolving topic. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.